the emotion of winning it all.
Eagles tonight will run to the
Then better.
Here's Hartman.
Whoa. Sideline caught. First down.
And that's going to be a penalty.
Off and running. Oh, he is nailed.
To Adams. Ooh.
No, I mean, you got 10 blockers. Look, he's already hit down.
And found evidence of the brain disease CTE.
We'll be paying special attention to the game, looking for concussion.
One of the NFL's most promising rookies last season says the risk of playing are not worth the reward.
The permanent brain disease has sparked so many questions about the future of football.
Are we looking at the end of football?
Before we get too deep into the topic, it's important you know exactly what a concussion is first and what happens during it. It all starts when your head receives a hard jolt or hit, causing your brain to move and slide into the walls of your skull. On impact, your brain squeezes against the inside of your skull and sends shock waves throughout your brain. These waves are so strong that they stretch and tear the axons of some neurons. When these axons tear, they reduce regular brain function by interrupting communication between the neurons. The torn axons soon degenerate, releasing toxic chemicals called neurotransmitters in the remaining cell space. Some symptoms are reduced problem-solving ability, loss of consciousness, loss of long-term memory, and, in severe cases, coma. According to Science Daily, it takes about 95 Gs of force to get a concussion, and the average football player receives hits up to 103 Gs of force when hit during a game. To put that into perspective, I bought a couple watermelons and dropped them off of a 2-story building to see how it would compare to an NFL hit to the head. After several trials and running the physics and the math, the G-force of the watermelon hitting the ground only reached up to 63.7 Gs of force. So imagine your head getting hit harder and what it does to your brain. The importance of concussion awareness grows more intense as experts like Dr. Ann McKee say almost all football players could have CTE. According to the Los Angeles Times, doctors have stated that the human brain is still very underdeveloped at ages 11 and 14, the age most common for kids to start playing tackle football. Some kids have even started playing football since they were 5 years old, with parents bearing the excuse that the kids just need a way to release all of their energy. Having kids constantly running around at ages 5 and so forth, constantly banging their heads around, seems to be a recipe for brain disease. To strengthen the argument even more, a New York Times article quotes, Wake Forest School of Medicine says boys between the ages of 8 and 13 who played just one season of tackle football had diminished brain function in parts of their brains. Even some former NFL players like Brett Favre and others have pleaded their case that they would not let their kid play tackle football. One player stating, I made the mistake starting tackle football at 9 years old. Now, CTE has taken my life away. Youth tackle football is all risk with no reward. One of the big question marks with Pop Warner was when a mom signed her son up for tackle football from ages 11 to 14 and went on to play high school football. After high school football, Joseph Chernach quit sports and moved on with his life. Unfortunately, Joseph felt depressed and had bad anxiety and had hung himself at the age of 25. Doctors soon found traces of CTE in his brain after the autopsy. This finding was huge because it showed that even for a short-lived football career, the effects of the game still carried on with him 7 years after and caused him to take his own life. As a result, California and other states have set in motion a ban on youth tackle football and the organization of Pop Warner. Although some players would argue that the life lessons taught through the game of football are very valuable to hold on to, the bad seem to outweigh the good. To get more information on the matter, I reached out to various doctors, but they declined to interview or answer any questions. Neurologist Dr. David Gershfield, Dr. David Chen, and Dr. Peter B. Weber would not allow me to conduct an interview. However, the most interesting response was from San Francisco 49ers head athletic trainer Tim McAdams. I was able to get a hold of him, and he said he was open to an interview, but once I told him it was going to regard questions about CTE, he bailed and told me to look at this website, playsmartplaysafe.com, run by the NFL. Essentially, He just told me to Google it. Luckily, I was able to turn to my good friend and former coach and ask him a couple questions.
My name is Mohammed Marah, 29 years young, 10 years plus football experience, high school, collegiate, Division I, and professional. When I asked him about the transition of level of care from San Jose State to the NFL, he said, and so the NFL is a business, right? So you have your first round draft picks and things of that nature, first, second, third round, whatever. And then you have like free agents. Such as myself, I was a free agent. So, if a first round draft pick or something, they get hurt, you know what I'm saying? They have some leeway, the team has already invested millions of dollars into that person. So they're not like you're good. Now if you're a free agent or a lower round draft pick, then it's a little different. And it's like, oh, you're hurt? Well, you better suck it up. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's someone, there's 1,000 other dudes coming to take your spot, right? Coming to take that money out of your hand. So you kind of pressure.
But what I wanted to know more about was what he thought about the direction the game is headed in. He says,
it's definitely digressing. For me personally, the whole point of football is to be physical and physicality, and they're like trying to remove that from the game and try to act like, that's not what it's about. Like, no, that's what it's about. It's about hitting. That's what it's about. And I get the safety. I get the whole safety thing, but at the same time, that's what football is. I don't like the fact that they're trying to change it into some 7-on-7 type passing league. It's kind of weak.
After interviewing Muhammad, I turned to the school's athletic trainer, Lucas Okuma, to see about what he had to say. Just to get a feel for how common concussions are, Lucas says he has diagnosed...
So maybe 25.
25 concussions from football?
Yeah, in the last 3 years, yeah.
When I asked Lucas about what he thinks the biggest safety hazard or problem with the game is, he had an interesting answer. Culture and change of culture.
No, well, I don't think it's necessarily a rule change that needs to happen. It's a culture change that needs to happen.
Like how so? What do you mean?
It's a lot of be a man and suck it up and man up and grow a pair and blah, 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 and work through your injuries and no pain, no gain, blah, 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 all that stuff, right? And I think that's a really toxic culture to have. And it doesn't, it actually takes away from performance, takes away from clean, good play, right? It decreases an athlete's ability because, they're playing through injury instead of playing at peak performance or peak health, right? And so just if that culture started to change into oh, you're injured, let's take care of this, let's get you back safely and bring you back stronger than you were before, then play would increase.
Then I asked Lucas the big question. Is the game as a whole ultimately unsafe and are head injuries inevitable?
Yeah, it's inevitable, sad to say. It's tough because I enjoy football.
Right.
Again, I always come back to culture because I think that's the biggest culprit. Because again, bad culture means dirty play, means sloppy play, means injuries.
This brings me to my next point about the future of football. According to Cox videos, there is less and less people playing the game. This is why there could possibly be an end to football, with less parents allowing their kids to sacrifice their brains now that the research has finally surfaced. While watching a great documentary called League of Denial, one of the CTE pioneers, Dr. Bennett Amalu, explains his interaction with an NFL executive.
NFL would not publicly sit down with Dr. Amalu, but one night in a private meeting, he brought his CTE slides and finally met face-to-face with one of the NFL's doctors.
And the NFL doctor at some point said to me, Bennett, do you know the implications of what you're doing? So I looked, he was on my left. I said, yeah, I think I do. He said, no, you don't. So we continued talking. At some point, he interrupted me again. Bennett, do you think you know the implications of what you're doing? okay, why don't you tell me what the implications are? Said, okay, I'll tell you. He said, if 10% of mothers in this country would begin to perceive football as a dangerous sport, that is the end of football.
After understanding that it only takes 10% of the population, it seems obvious that the NFL is heading down a dark path. I'm sure if you ask a parent if they would rather risk their child getting brain disease or learn great life lessons through a sport and maybe be able to get a free college education, 9 out of 10 times they're gonna say no. However, there are some positive steps now being taken in the right direction. Football has been very progressive recently. To begin, now every coach and Pop Warner has to be Heads Up certified. This is where all coaches go to a huge clinic run by professionals that teach coaches how to coach kids on form tackling, importance of hydration and rest, and much more. It does not exempt the fact that kids are still banging their undeveloped brains around, but it ensures parents that their kids are being coached the proper techniques to avoid head and limb injuries. Additionally, there is this new synthetic turf introduced by Viconic, claiming that they are making a softer turf that reduces impact forces, but still works great and no changes apparent when someone's running or cutting.
So here you have the grass fibers with the infill interspersed in between the grass fibers, usually a combination of sand in this layer and then a layer of crumb rubber on top of it. And our product here is shown below that system with our turf interaction bumps that grab onto the backside of the artificial turf surface to prevent slippage. Essentially, they just interlock together like little pieces of a puzzle.
Because a lot of concussions happen when someone's head whiplashes violently on the turf, Viconic is trying to put an end to that being a possibility. As well, there have been a lot of new rule changes recently, most relating to the prevention of a player using helmets as weapons or initiating contact with your head. Along with the new rule changes, Riddell has made a new Insight Impact Response system that allows you to place sensors inside of a player's helmet and monitor the hits they have been taking. If this technology leaks out into the NFL, it will be a huge deal for player safety, as team doctors can determine if a hit was too hard and whether or not to take a player out of a game. Most importantly, there is this new helmet being brought to attention, the Vices helmet. This helmet is very different from all the others and has been voted the top performing helmet of 2017. What makes this helmet so special is that right beneath the hard shell, there is a layer of columns or filaments that deform and buckle. These columns move omnidirectionally and respond to a hit from any angle. Pretty much the helmet squishes and bends but keeps your head safe. It just simply absorbs most of the blow before it gets to your head. It reduces the acceleration of the collision and helps prevent your brain from completely slamming into the walls of your skull. The best part is, Vices is starting to gain a lot of attention and is at the front lines of the new movement to help prevent head injuries. Although they are very expensive to purchase individually, Vices has began becoming the official helmet of some programs. Schools like Dowling Catholic High School, Tigard High School, Point Verde High School, and even some powerhouses like Centennial and Trinity Christian. Even better, the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh and the University of Notre Dame are both Vices sponsored. Big-time athletes even speak highly of the product.
You guys are going to change the game with this. I don't mean that like, I'm not bullshitting. Yeah. You might just save the game of football with this helmet. This is unbelievable.
Awesome. Good. Good.
This is ridiculous.
It feels good?
I don't want to take it off.
But I can honestly say in 3 days of going helmet to helmet almost every day that I haven't felt a headache, haven't felt anything.
I think upon impact, surprisingly, I didn't have no problem with it.
Contact has felt tremendous with this helmet. I felt like I can keep my head up and keep my neck up, which a lot of players don't tell you about, but they don't really can do with these other different helmets because you don't have the compression. Like, it's just straight impact. Like, there's nothing there to help us out.
And it's, you have your little head collisions and all that, and seeing stars in different helmets. I didn't have a single problem with it. And that's the most surprising thing to me because I was laying my shoulders and head into some tackles in the past 2 games and just fine. This is kind of like an impact and it goes away.
In conclusion, it seems like there isn't anything possible that can be done to prevent head collisions in football. Adding on, it seems like CTE is inevitable too. The percentage of players who have played in the past and who now have CTE are so high that it seems too hard to avoid. After acknowledging that even subconcussive hits that occur in almost every single play can cause CTE over time, it's apparent that you can't get rid of head injuries without getting rid of football. Now, I personally don't think football is going to disappear anytime soon. There's too many people out there that are willing to sacrifice their body and future because they love the game too much and because they want to be able to support their families. However, with the new technology like the Vice's helmet, Viconic turf, and the new rule changes, it's definitely a step in the right direction. It seems that especially with the new wave of NFL players wearing Vice's helmets, the culture of football is in fact slowly beginning to change and players are starting to take care of their own safety. But in the end, no matter how the culture of the players change, the game of football is simply drawn up as a dangerous sport.